Good evening, everybody present out here. In our 10 days online capacity development program, today our guest speaker is Dr. Javaid Rashid. Dr. Javaid Rashid has done his MPhil and PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He has been a UGC and ICMR Junior Research Fellow as well. Dr. Javed's areas of interest are child welfare, child protection, juvenile justice, humanitarian aid, childhood theory, and Dr. Saab has submitted by the publications and the reports regarding child care institutions in Jammu and Kashmir. And he has also done a lot of work on juvenile justice in Jammu and Kashmir, issues and challenges. So today, Dr. Javaid Rashid will apprise us about the child care institutions in Jammu and Kashmir in the light of Juvenile Justice Act. So without further wasting time, it's now over to our speaker, our esteemed speaker, and I wholeheartedly, on behalf of my team, welcome you, sir, in today's program, and we are very delighted to be amongst you, to be here, and you will be our speaker in today's session. So without wasting time, I hand over this session to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Yahya, all other participants. It is an honor that the organizers, the Pro Bono Club, Kashmir Law College, and others have invited me. I have done some work in the field of child rights, child protection for some time now. But yes, I may not be a resource person, but definitely I will try to bring in some main arguments that are essential in the light of Juvenile Justice Act as far as the CCIs are concerned. And because I do not come from the typical law background, but it's also very important that I emphasize the social science perspective, the social legal perspective of Juvenile Justice Act, and why child care or child protection is crucial, particularly for children who come in contact with juvenile justice system, whether they are children in need of care and protection or children in conflict with law. So, can I share my screen? I think there is some error when I share. Am I allowed to share the screen, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Yahya?
You can. You yes, sir. Yes, sir. Why not?
It shows can't share your screen. Sorry, an error has occurred with the
Mr.
screen share.
Tawsif, please
No issues. I mean, because I have to ultimately, it may not be crucial, but if it is like resolved, then it may help the listeners because I had some important slides, particularly when it comes to data, as far as JNK and our country is concerned. But anyways, not a
1 minute, sir.
problem.
1 minute, sir. Let me.
Yeah.
Sir,
Tawsif, please इसको देख लो.
sir, you can share the PPT.
Yes, sir. It's now visible.
It's visible. So is it visible now?
Yes, sir, is.
Thank you. So as I had said that I will keep my video off because of data and other things. Sometimes it gets hanged if you keep all the things on. As I said, in the light of Juvenile Justice Act, from a social science perspective, how should we understand childcare institutions? But before that, it's also very important that yes, we do have different types of childcare institutions as mandated under the law, Section 2 of JJ Act and other sections, wherein they have described and defined different childcare institutions, particularly for those children who come in contact with law, either as children in need of care and protection or children in conflict with law. So I hope we know that how the child welfare committees have been mandated to monitor the functioning, the standards of care of CCIs, the Child Welfare Committees, are mandated under law. And similarly, juvenile justice boards, the statutory bodies, how they actually also have very important defined roles to establish standards of care or facilitate or order the standards of care and monitor the same across the CCIs. Things have greatly changed now. So, had we discussed the CCIs, if I can say 6 or 7 years before, I would have presented a very different data to you. Though I have some data of that year also, like 6 7 years before, what was the status of CCIs, and currently what is the status. To a large extent, it has greatly improved. We'll come through that in this presentation. So, whether you talk of children homes or open shelters, observation homes, special homes or places of safety, or specialized adoption agencies. So, different types of facilities recognized under the Juvenile Justice Act for providing care and protection to children who are in need of such services, and definitely care and protection, especially for those vulnerable children, at risk children who have faced adversity, is very critical. But it also needs to be emphasized that the same act says in one of its principles, the foundational principles of Juvenile Justice Act, that the institutionalization has to be the last resort. So it is very important to emphasize here again that how it needs to be underlined that sending a child to CCI, particularly a child, obviously he or she is in need of such service, but sending it obviously has to be in the best interest of that child, particular child. So this generally, these principles seem to be, I mean, I hope across our UT, all the CWCs and JJBs or all other child protection functionaries do take care of these principles, or these principles do guide their actions and orders. But to a large extent, when we look at national level, there are many malpractices. Sometimes the decisions and orders issued by CWC or JJB or other authorities may not be in the best interest of the child, or they may not actually see institutionalization as a last resort. So, why there are definitely reasons to that. So, before coming to the main topic, I would also try to emphasize, because I am a social science researcher, I am not a typical legal person, but I will try to give some social science perspectives to the child rights scenario or the child protection scenario. I have some time. So the point is that if you look at across how child rights and child protection organizations, whether government or NGOs, particularly NGOs, because unfortunately, lot of I that's why I emphasize this word unfortunately, because fundamentally child welfare or child rights or child protection, it is the domain of the government, the state, and but precisely for the reason that around 40% of our population is children. So 40% or 39%, both at national level, at UT level, we have 39% of our population which are children. It means under 18, we have 39% of our population. It means they do must have all the services that our state must invest. But unfortunately, it is a national scenario. Though things have greatly changed in last 7 or 8 years, I do recognize that as a researcher, but things have not been done sufficiently or adequately when it comes to the 40% of this population, our total population, which is what we say children. So, how much of GDP do we invest on this 40% of our population? It's very, I mean, I think less than even 2%. I do not have exact data, but it is around that. Similarly, there are many other malpractices. There are other disinvestments that we make. And when I said unfortunately, I mean that this whole area of child welfare, child protection, or child rights has been delegated to non-governmental organizations. I do accept that non-governmental organizations work very hard on the ground or at the grassroots level. They do facilitate a lot of services for children, and they do help other functionaries in providing services and rights to children. But that does not mean that state will withdraw its support to children, or state will withdraw its investment in children. Fundamentally, it is the responsibility of the state, the government, to provide care and protection to services. But that's what I said. Unfortunately, you might have also seen, even in our own context, the national context, or even in the South Asian context, I must tell you. But if we compare how much Europe and West invest on the children, on their own child population, that is huge. We cannot even compare that. But having said that, this things have greatly changed. It doesn't mean things have been static. There are a lot of organizations who do advocate that governments and states should invest. So that's why this is again an investment when it comes to childcare institutions. But as I said, we have to be very careful. We have to underline that it is the last resort. The institutionalization, sending a child to CCI, is the last resort in that particular case. If there are no other options, fit options, or we can say uh, where the CWC or JJB feels that there are no other good options for the child to live at, or it is, if even if his or her family is not the place of safety or place of development or enriching development, or cannot provide care and protection, then they shift the child to CCI. And as I know, as I said, there are different, but what I wanted to emphasize that generally these modules that we use, particularly because I said non-governmental organizations have a huge influence on the way we deal with children in CCIs, or on the way we deal uh, with children in CWCs or JJBs. So these modules have generally come from, uh, I mean, other contexts which have. So that's what my actually focus would be. But I will quickly go to the main topic that generally these modules which come from, for example, I won't name any organization, international organization, but I would say they will come from a bigger global child rights organization. For example, a module which has been developed in Kenya for children, the same will be supplied to us, and and we will, our ministries will be asked to implement it because this is a very good model. It has greatly helped children in Kenya or South Africa or London or other contexts in Sri Lanka. It will also greatly boost your child protection and child rights in Kashmir or J&K. But unfortunately, they, the modules obviously will not work because it is not developed as per our context. And that is why we are very quick generally to, unfortunately, embrace these modules, because there is a lot of influence of these international organizations over policy making. That's why I just wanted to sensitize the audience, the participants who majorly would be from law background, that yes, in child protection, in the domain of child rights in India or in J&K, we have been greatly influenced by the modules which have been supplied to us through different international organizations. And those modules, unfortunately, have undermined our own indigenous and native perspectives or the local systems of knowledge. And as I said, individual and what do I mean by that? Basically, is that yes, it is good if we look at a module which is developed in West or Europe or in other context, but that needs to be contextualized as per our need, as per our context, as per our socio-cultural realities, or as per the situation of our children. Because childhood is not a universal phenomenon. I mean to say, children do not experience same childhood across the globe. Every child has, or particularly in a particular socio-cultural context, every child experiences his childhood very diversely and uniquely. But when you go to international modules, they homogenize the childhood as if all children live the same life, or as if all children have similar experiences as children. But it is fundamentally wrong, and that is where things start deteriorating when it comes to child protection and child rights. So why I wanted to emphasize here, because I do trainings with some of the basic functionaries like teachers or special juvenile police units in J&K. I have been involved in many trainings. So we do an exercise. I will just quickly go through that exercise, and the results are very fascinating. Because when, for example, when we do an exercise, this, I hope this is visible, a table having three columns on the screen.
Yes,
uh,
sir. It is
and
visible.
so in the middle column we have qualities, different adjectives, different positive and negative qualities. And on the left side we have a category for juvenile, and the other side we have the category for self. So what is that we do? We ask two questions to the participants. I'll quickly run through it because it's very interesting. So I ask a question that select five adjectives from the list that describes a child, maybe a child in conflict with law. So we do this exercise, for example, with SIs who are in charge of special juvenile police units. So I did it exercise very recently in IMPA. So the participants are asked to select among these 20 adjectives, five for a child who is in conflict with law. I hope it's clear. So similarly, they are also asked the second question, five objectives that they have to select and describe their own self from the same objectives. So generally it takes some half an hour to complete this exercise, and then they give their, and ultimately these are the results. So obviously, uh, if the participants are not trained on juvenile justice or child protection or child psychology, they will have, I mean, we generally have this type of result. I hope this is clear. So a child who has, who is in conflict with law is normally branded as a person. I mean, it was a recent result that I got before the training session. So when it comes to judging a person who has committed or who is alleged to have committed an offense, so how is that we look at that person, and how is that we look at our, so fundamentally what was the lesson, that how biases and preconceived notions can affect one's actions, and why is it important to remain objectively sensitive and professional while dealing with children, and particularly children in need of care and protection or children in conflict with law. And also very important to emphasize, why I'm emphasizing this, I know that because I have been working in Kashmir across all the divisions, all the districts, particularly a study which I did in 2017 for ICPS department on CCIs. I will share some results of that also. But what I could see that when we are in a position, for example, as an adult, or as a superintendent of CCI, or as a child protection officer, or as a chairperson of CWC, or as a principal magistrate of JJB, or any other NGO functionary, we think we are working at grassroots level, we are adults, we are working for children. What we forget is, or what we do not do, we do not work with children. I mean, this is something I may seem to be very critical of the people who work on child rights in our region. No, I mean to say they do work, they do wonderfully work, but the approach needs to be quite, I mean, we can say professional. So when we are adults, we think we know everything about children, but that is not the reality. Children have been greatly misrepresented, and the hierarchical uh, relationship that we have, because as an adult and as a child there is always a dichotomous hierarchical divide. So we think as adults we know everything about the child, but it is actually not true. It is not what science tells us or neuroscience tells us. So fundamentally, it's also very important to emphasize that institutional care, whatever it is, whether it is JJB, whether you're talking of CWC or a CCI, or CCI is again an institution that that gives care and protection to children, particularly who are in need of care and protection, or children who are in conflict with law. So, but it has to be founded on these principles. One, that it is the last resort, it is the last option, mm, when it comes to the disposition of a particular case. So before that, CWC or JJB or any other authority have to see alternative options. So that is one thing. And whatever decision is taken by CWC chairperson or other members or other authorities, it has to be in the best interest of the child. So that is why, because if you look at this diagram, so child protection is not just in isolation. It has to be a comprehensive thing. Even under CCI, what does the act mandate? It mandates comprehensive care. It cannot replace family. So if a child lives in CCI and if another child lives in family, there is a huge gap in care and protection. But to a large extent, the act mandates CCIs to be near, obviously, to have those standards. And previously, in previous legislations, we had the minimum standards of care. But now, under 2015 Juvenile Justice Act, it is not a minimum, it is the quality standard of care. Child protection or child care, it is to be seen from multi-dimensional perspective. It cannot just be giving them clothes, food, and shelter. The all-round development, the mental health, the education, the nutrition. So why? Because science tells us many things about the brain of the child. So I will quickly run through these slides and then move on to some of the issues that we have in J&K as far as CCI is concerned. So generally, if you look around CCIs across any state, and particularly in our own state, so children who are developing in their, I mean, who are in formative states, like below 18, below 15, or even as young as 5, as young as 6. So as far as their brain is concerned, it is developing. So the gray matter is increasing. So that's what neuroscience tells us. So if we invest in children at this point of time, it will have a great impact. And again, if the child, so this, I hope this slide is visible. This is a scan of a 3-year-old child, two children. One is normal, another is a person who has experienced extreme neglect in a family or in a CCI. It could be any. So when a child experiences extreme neglect in his childhood, so this is a scan of a 3-year-old child. So look at the impact on the brain. So it means by this we can judge the responsibility of CCI. It is not just giving shelter and food, it is much more than that. And that is why, precisely for that reason, that the act has mandated that CCI has to be the last option. Before that, we have to alternatively see whether kafala system will work. So yes, we understand that even in J&K, for example, as per the estimates, we have around, I mean, it's a data of 5 years before, but so one of the prominent global organization did a survey. They said around 2.5 lakh children are without parents in J&K, and it's not that all of them live in CCIs. Very small percentage, 5% of those children who are without parents live in CCIs. Where do others live? So the point is, still we have traditional systems, we have family-based systems, the kafala system, or Baitul Mal, or other, I mean, community-based rehabilitations, which are there informally present. So state does not intervene there. But the point is, that is still existing. But yes, small percentage does live in CCS. We know in every corner of our valley we do have different orphanages and different religious seminaries where children without parents do live. So, but the point is, what is the condition? What are the services that they get? That is something we have to be very careful. And as I said, I will quickly move to the main. Yes. So the point is, so if you look at the data, we have around 10,000 CCIs around the country, and almost 4 lakh children. This is the estimate of Minister of Women and Child Development, are there who live in the CCIs. So a study, that is what I wanted to emphasize, that a study conducted by J&K Child Resource Center in 2017, which was done under my, I should say, humble supervision, that what we found that in J&K we have 491 CCIs across 22 districts, because it is when we are talking the before the the enactment of the J&K Reorganization Act 2019. So it had around 24,000 children that these CCIs housed, and 85% of these CCIs were privately run or run by different NGOs or by different trust or local religious bodies, and only 15% of CCIs were run by the government. And also only 11% of these childcare institutions across 22 districts were registered under the Juvenile Justice Act. So this is something. So why does the act? So you might actually be knowing that under Juvenile Justice Act, it is compulsory for the administration of CCI, obviously the private run CCI, to register under Juvenile Justice Act, because the registration is obviously on conditions, because whether they have standard level of care and protection for children. So but if you look at the data, I don't think many things have changed in this, but maybe the percentage would be slightly higher. So at that point of time, only 11% of CCIs were registered with the under the JJ Act, and about 37%, only 37% had sufficient staff. So when it comes, it's not, CCI may not just be a building. It's a comprehensive complex in itself. It is about infrastructure, but at the same time, beyond physical infrastructure, you need trained people. But only, what we could see in our study, only 40%, maximum 40%, had sufficient staff. One is staff, another is trained staff. So having people around may not be, they may not be professionals. They may not be trained in child psychology. They may not be trained social workers or trained people who could actually work with children or take care of children. So similarly, there were very surprising, and I should say disturbing findings that we could see. But yes, the ICPS of Jammu and Kashmir, the mission, under Mission Vatsalya, we should all know that all of it now comes under Mission Vatsalya. They have greatly contributed to the development of CCIs right from that survey, because our task was to identify the loopholes, the gray areas, and many things have changed, as I said, since then. And fundamental again to CCI is something very crucial. I wanted to go to that. That is the individual child care plan, because every child is unique. That is how a professional, even a lawyer or a child protection officer or a counselor, has to see that every child is unique in its own way. Every childhood is culturally constructed. Every childhood is basically, it's not that all children have common childhood. So every child has his or her own struggle, own experience. So when children get exposed to adversities in their childhood, it is the child who knows where it has, obviously, how it has shaped his life or her life. So that is why when children come in contact with juvenile justice system, it's very important that the individual child care plan is developed. But unfortunately, if you look around, in my study, what I found, only 5% of CCIs across the 22 districts of J&K had individual childcare plans. So, what could be the reasons? One, the staff was not aware that what is an ICP. So, you need a trained person who could prepare an ICP for a particular child if he or she is housed in a CCI. So, that is something which is very, I should say, it is a it's a it's a it's a something that we need to ponder upon, that why ICP is so. If a CCI has no ICP for children, then what type of CCI is? How can you register that CCI under Juvenile Justice Act? Do they have sufficient trained people, whether in the form of social workers, counselors? But unfortunately, what we have seen, the people who might have done their 12th or graduation, they are manning the CCIs, or even in many cases, illiterate people. So, because it's a professional exercise, it's not that we give them food, as I said, we give them shelter. it is a comprehensive, because childhood is a phase which is something that we need to invest in. It's not to be handled or managed. We have to greatly invest. But as far as the challenge faced even currently, across the nation, there are different studies that have been done on CCIs, and it has been found that many CCIs there is prevailing systemic abuse of all types: the physical, the emotional, the sexual. Whether you talk of Bihar, whether you talk of any other state, the cases have been. Why I mentioned Bihar? Because some years back there was a huge scandal that was unearthed, and it was run in a CCI. So the point is, children who are in CCIs are vulnerable to diverse forms of abuse, and at the same time there are financial constraints, chronic underfunding. Maybe one, if it is a private run CCI, obviously then the NGOs or other trusts do not have sufficient. But if it is a government run, still there are gaps, I mean financial constraints and gaps. And definitely there is poor data management, because maybe even the government is not aware how many CCIs are operating, I mean, in the country, I mean the exact number, because that survey though was done previously, but every now and then CCIs are coming up. And particularly in the J&K, the phase we had before 2019, right from 90s. So those 30, 40 years have seen the mushrooming of orphanage. But one thing that can be, I mean, positively seen, that they took care of children who were without parents, but at the same time, they had no professional competence to take care of children, and particularly those children who had faced extreme adversities. And similarly, another very important challenge of CCIs is that they are not trained for real world, because there is a lot of skill gap. There is a lot of inadequateness in their. I mean, when they come out of what after CCIs, if they live in a CCI for 6 years, 7 years, or 10 years, and in many cases, some children live in CCI up to 18 years even. But what after that? Why would they go? Do they have sufficient skills to stand on their own feet, or to get a job, or to continue their education on their own? So, though under ICPS we do have some schemes for aftercare, but across, I mean, across the country, a lot of children who come out of CCI, there is a huge gap between what the society and the market demands. They do not have that. And similarly, as I said, there is lack of professionals in CCIs, and also hardly we have collaborations. And so and many these uh, I mean, recently Delhi High Court also gave very important instructions to the government, that why CCIs needs to be under the radar, and why they should actually focus on CCIs, because there is no monitoring and regulation. And that is the talk of Delhi. So you can imagine, when we have almost all the major organizations working in Delhi, but what about places like Assam or J&K, very far away from, I mean, the main stream. But yes, it's very important that we, as I said, I'm going to some of the important, that yes. So this is what I wanted to show. I hope this slide is visible. The graphs. Yeah,
Yes,
yes,
sir.
sir. Is it visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's visible.
Yeah, this is what I wanted to again focus. So if you look at this slide, what is that we come to know? So on one hand, if you look at this orange graph, which starts from obviously uh, close to zero at one, so it is the cumulative brain development pattern. It's an international trend, obviously, that how our brain develops. So up to 7 years of age, our brain, almost 90% of our brain develops up to 7 or 8 years of age. So, and then there is hardly any change. But if you look at how our governments invest in children, so if you look at these lemon color, we can say, or green color triangles, so it is very flat up to 6, and then suddenly it rises. So it means Do we miss the bus? That is actually the point. Particularly third world countries. The third world countries, the third world countries generally invest after 7 or 8 years. Greatly invest in children. Not greatly, but I mean to say, whatever, if they invest 10 rupees, but they invest 9 after 8 years of age. So the point is there is this huge gap. The child budgeting is inverse of child development pattern. And the data says, if you invest, if a state invest $1 in children, it will get $11 back in different ways. The rate of return is very high when you invest in children, but unfortunately, what happens, we actually miss the bus. And uh, in in India, though there is a positive hope, there is hope. That is what policymakers say, that through the implementation of new national education policy 2020, the government is intending to increase this investment. So it may bridge a gap, this gap slightly, but it may not actually be sufficient. So the point is, how, as a lawyer, as an advocate, as a child protection officer, or as a researcher, how we need to advocate that investing in children is always profitable. So if you look at data, for example, this graph, there is rate of return. I mean, if you look at preschool programs, schooling, and job training, so the rate of return greatly decreases as you age. So it means the rate of return is very high in first 10 to 12 years of a child. So the amount of investment that we make in early childhood and children, it will have a great, and that is what happens in Europe and West. So though we criticize their models, as a social science researcher, I do criticize their models because they are directly implemented in our context without contextualization. But when you look at these positive stories, the way they invest in their children, whether it is nutrition, education, or social emotional skills, or other mental health programs. So that is something very important, that our states, our governments need to take, I mean, this very seriously. That yes, rate of return is very high in children when we invest in children. That is why we need to. And again, if you look at this graph, I know I may be boring you with these slides, but yes, it's very critical. So the neuroscience, if you look at the below three boxes, so these are the synapses. So at the age of 0, for example, when you are a 1 year old, so your synapses are not dense. But at the age of 6, the middle part of this box, it is very dense. And as you go to 14, it again loses that density. So we call it synaptic pruning in neurosciences. But so what does it indicate? It indicates that the brain, which is in the formative stage in the first 10 years, is the period we have to invest. So that is why I connected it to my topic, is that generally across J&K, we have children up to 12 or 13 years of age in CCIs. So that is something we need to, uh, I mean, precisely see. I'm moving a bit fast, but I wanted to show you a slide uh, of what is the current scenario that we have in the state, the as far as how things have greatly changed. So I hope this is the best practices is visible. So one, what happened after 2019, after the abrogation of Article 370, many things have greatly and positively changed, especially when it comes to children. One was the Kara and Sara, they have been started, the adoption centers. And similarly, the UT of J&K also got registered on Carings portal of Kara in 2020. And also, very importantly, we had the first baby placed in pre-adoption foster care in the month of Feb 2023. And precisely, all children homes are, I mean, government run homes. So in every district, we have one CCI for boys, which is called Palash, and one CCI for girls, which is called Parisha. So this is again something that we need to appreciate, that the government of J&K is has started and is also currently doing a lot of work as far as child protection is concerned. And similarly, there are available. There are services which are available in terms of education, schooling, and and even the health initiatives that have been taken across all CCIs. So things have greatly changed, and as of now, we have around 64 NGO run CCIs which are registered under JJ Act, and 45 CCIs which are government run. So all the funding comes from the government. And similarly, we have adoption centers, cradle baby centers, because there are issues with our, I mean, in our UT, that have been increasing since last 4 5 years, like children abandoning. So children are abandoned. So when some couple, or because of so many reasons, they don't want a child, but it is still born, so previously would throw it in the dustbins. You might have heard those stories through media. But now what government did, they have set up cradle baby reception centers. So if a child does not, if a couple does not want a child, but it is born, so they can keep the child in the reception, this cradle baby reception center, without anything. So without any, we can say, I mean, they can just drop it there. Then the staff of ICPS, because we have 12 such centers in J&K, they do the formal, they do it on their own. So the things are moving on. And as I said also, in each district we have child welfare committees, we have JJBs. And with the implementation of integrated child protection scheme in 2017, things have moved on. And as I said, the the study that I did across all the 22 districts was funded by ICPS. So that is something very laudable, in a sense that they wanted data, they wanted issues, so that they could work on. And as a researcher, we identified the issues, and the government has started to work. And till now, many things have been achieved. So I know this presentation was fragmented, but I hope my point is clear, that childcare institution is a very important institution as far as juvenile justice system is concerned. But fundamentally, it is based on two very important principles, that is, whether living in CCI is in the best interest of the child, and it is obviously the last resort. But even if it is the last resort, government has to make available these CCIs in full-fledged manner, having all the facilities of nutrition, education, mental health, and including recreation. So we do, for example, if you pay a visit to juvenile home in Harvan, so which houses children who are in conflict with law, very serious and sensitive cases, are I mean, children who are alleged to have committed offenses. So they are there, they are placed in that observation home, or special home, but they do have facilities. So the point is, though it is just one in the main city, but what about, for example, a child who is from Kupwara, when he is shifted to Srinagar for maybe 1 year or 2 year or 6 months? So it greatly disturbs that maybe that best interest. So maybe having, agar for example yahi home Kupwara mein hota, but maybe it may not be possible for government to invest that much. But certainly, wherever we are, the governments, the states, and all the stakeholders need to invest heavily, and prioritize the domain of child welfare and child protection. Because generally we do say that children are important, but when it comes to investment, they are hardly in our priority list. They are hardly in the priority list of the government. Maybe one reason could be they do not have vote. The right to vote is after 18 years of age. So, but as a researcher, as an advocate, as a lawyer, we must keep this in mind, that yes, we need to invest in children, and we must advocate for their rights, and we must convince governments through our research, through our practice, through our deliberations, in a very meaningful manner, professional manner, convince the states that yes, it is the need of the hour. Children need to be invested, and particularly those children who have faced adversities for last many years. So I rest my case. I think uh, maybe we can have some time for interaction. I don't want it to be a one-way thing, but There might be some issues which you can raise. I am open to discussion on anything. Yeah, yes, sir. I hope.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, any student having any clarification, any questions, our speaker is here. You can ask any question or any clarification regarding that topic which was discussed. This juvenile justice act is very important legislation in Jammu and Kashmir as well.
Yeah. That's
So
and particularly in the context we have been living. I mean, for the. And unfortunately, what happened? I think just a minute, because when in 1986 the act was in place at the central level, and because of Article 370, it was not extended to J&K. So it took our government 10 years to rise from the slumber and enact the act. It's same act in 97, so
okay,
1997, and then it took another 10 years to frame the rules. So it means our children were deprived of this legislation for 20 years. So, and we know what 20 years kya the. I mean,
क्या
children
थे?
were getting exposed to adversity. So, and even till 2017, we had no JJB or CWC in place. So that is why we should be thankful to this scheme ICPS, which has brought in across all the districts, juvenile justice boards, CWCs, or district child protection units. So things have been improving, but yes, as I said, it's not sufficient. We have to move on and invest. And because children constitute 40% of our population, so unka bhi hak banta hai resources pe, isn't it? I think
Yes, sir.
Farhat Riaz has some.
Mm,
Yes, sir.
Farhat Riaz, yeah.
First of all, thank you so much, sir, for an incredible, helpful, and interesting workshop. Really, like it was really an insightful workshop. So my question is, like, in what sense can our current better, uh, I mean to say, to better support the rehabilitation and reintegration of young offenders into society? Because you may
Mhm.
have seen how current justice is working, but
Yeah,
GGG.
yeah, Farhat, yeah, very important, because always there is scope for improvement. Whatever, if if you would ask this question in 2017, I would say there is hardly anything on the ground as far as juvenile justice system is
True,
concerned.
true.
But now, now in every district we have JJBs and we have CWCs. Even in every district we have many special juvenile police units. So one where an SI is in charge of special juvenile police unit. We have CCIs, as I said, Palash and Parisha is there in every district. Similarly, other non-governmental organization run homes are there. But my my as a researcher, I would say two main things are lacking. One is there is not sufficient funding from the state. There is funding, but it is not sufficient, because you might have also seen the nature of crimes is also changing. you know Children are getting exposed to crime, children are getting exposed to diverse issues at a very young age. So it is not just juvenile justice protect these officers or juvenile justice officials who have this role. It's a multi-dimensional role, maybe all other stakeholders involved. But I would say there is lack of professionals in our juvenile justice system. There are, I mean, you might have seen, for example, if you look at CWC Srinagar. So fortunately, we have all the members of CWC are from they are legally trained. I mean, they are legal, we should say, educated. All of them have degrees in law. But this is also something that there should be some other person from other social science background. But around CCIs in particular, you do not have sufficient professionals, like people who have psychology, sociology, law, or social work as a. So even in many, you have people who have I mean, very general courses. They are not trained in social work. They are not trained in dealing with children. So that is another thing. But one more aspect is evidence. There is hardly any research being done on the issues like juvenile justice or child protection or child rights. There are some reports here and there, or articles people write, newspaper articles, but that is not evidence. That's not research. So what, as a for example, I have a research scholar under my supervision at University of Kashmir who is now working, but that is just a I mean case. So we are planning. He has started to work on JJBs in JNK, how they are functioning. I mean, the issues and the challenge and many other things, the procedures that they adopt. So he is studying their orders. So the JJBs, because they ultimately issue orders as per the cases. So I mean to say, building evidence would be one suggestion. Investing, government should invest more and more and have sufficient funds, and also we need a lot of professionals in this sector. Farhat, yes.
Sir, we have another question from Mir Nasrina.
Hmm.
Sir, could you explain reintegration?
Yeah,
She has questioned about reintegration, explanation of reintegration.
yeah. Because that is a very big challenge for juvenile justice system, particularly in our context. Look, उसके reasons भी यही है कि we do not have trained professionals who could actually professionally train a child or an adolescent how to actually reclaim his position in the society. For example, a child who has been in an observation home for 3 years or 2 years. So, how he would go or she would go back into his family or her family and reintegrate. So, it's not just his responsibility or her responsibility alone. So, reintegration process does happen, but a lot of efforts are needed from professionals as well as from the family. So it cannot happen without the role of family. So when reintegration happens, reintegration would mean reintegrating the child who is in conflict with law or he is in need of care and protection with his or her family. But it is again a comprehensive process. It may not be a one step process that you just shifted. For example, what happened, this is a very important, what happened during COVID-19. Lot of thousands of children were sent back to their homes and families by CCIs. So we call it deinstitutionalization, which was random and it was unprofessional. They did not even plan कि ये बच्चा अगर फैमिली में वापस अभी तो ये सीसीआई में रह रहा था अब कोविड की वजह से he had to be sent back. There were so many issues across India, and some studies have been done on that, and it has created havoc, particularly in the lives of those children, because they were not accepted by the family. For example, a child who has no parents, he was sent back to some relative's family or the guardian's family, but he or she was not accepted, or and there was a lot of abuse. I mean, studies have come upon that, how COVID-19 actually. So the point is, reintegration is not that simple. It is a professional exercise. It has to be assessed. So it could even take months, for example. That's why we have to plan reintegration. That is the role. That is why I emphasized on individual child care plan, because every child has a different situation in family, in home, or as far as his own life is concerned. So that is something very important. But reintegration simply would mean uh, sending a child back to his original context, which is family, where he or she is in a position to get all what is needed in terms of care and services. Because अगर 18 साल तक ये CCI में रह चुके हैं तो उसके बाद क्या होगा? Will he get a job? Will he continue his education? Does he have sufficient, sufficient, I should say, sufficient um, resources available to him to take care of his own self alone? So, or are there guardians or relatives who could take care of him? But the point is, there are government schemes, aftercare schemes are there, or skill development schemes are there. That's why a trained professional would actually assess all the situation, and that is why the individual child care plan for reintegration is a must, where the focus is on a particular child. So children in CCI is not are not just numbers. Everyone is a different child. That is how a professional has to see, and every child's journey is different, and every child's reintegration would be different. I think there is another very important question in the chat, that is, why the age of juvenile is still fixed at 18 by the legislation when the environment in practical has drastically evolved. So Bilkis Ahad has raised a very important, controversial, I should say, uh, issue, but it is not 18 now, particularly in heinous crimes. After Nirbhaya case, what happened? Nirbhaya case, you might have heard about that, the infamous double murder, Nirbhaya, that rape and murder case. So the the Verma committee suggested that the age of juveniles should be reduced from 18 to 16 in heinous crimes, and it was accepted by the government, though it was rejected by the standing committee of the parliament, but government still accepted it, and it became a very controversial issue. So currently we have, so if a child commits heinous crime, and if he is in the age bracket of 16 and 18, so if he is above 16, he or she will be treated as an adult if the committee thinks that, I mean, the child is mature, or the child has committed this crime with a mature adult mind. ठीक है, ये provision है अब act में,
Yes, sir.
though it is, yeah, that is true. So the point is, but I must also note here that almost all the child right activists are against this amendment, though it is there. Personally speaking, I'm also against it because it violates international law of, I mean, whatever standards we have as far as juvenile justice is concerned, because across all nations you have 18 years of age, even if, so if you go to the principles of juvenile justice act, the focus has not to be on the offense. Recently, high court, Allahabad high court also recently, just last month, they also categorically emphasized that in case of juveniles, offense, the gravity of offense should not be considered. It is obviously, we do, things have greatly changed. Children are also being used by gangs, by different, I mean, say, these gangs and groups, for different types of crimes. But that is not the fault of the crime. It is the fault of the system. It is the fault of the broader context. We cannot blame the child for that. So child needs rehabilitation. Child needs reintegration. Child needs an environment which is enriching. He needs or she needs care and protection because he or she has a long way to go. So if you treat them as criminals, it will make hardened criminals out of them. It will make them hardened criminals, which has been happening in our context. Like before 2009 or 2016, a child in J&K, if he would commit a crime, he was sent to central jail where he would learn other crimes because he was kept with hardened criminals or terrorists. They would they would learn the, I mean, other forms of anti-national activities or other forms of crimes and thefts inside the jail. So the point is, that is why juvenile justice system is there, preventing. It's more about rehabilitation. It's not about punishment. It's about rehabilitation. It's about care and protection. So I think that is why Mr. Yahya also said that this is a very important legislation, and you must note that Juvenile Justice Act will override all other acts, even if in the case of Public Safety Act. So you cannot detain a child uh, under Public Safety Act because of the same reason. So it means juvenile justice will prevail fundamentally for the rehabilitation.
We have another question, Pune.
Yeah, there is
Perfect
another.
case.
This is what I was referring to. So yes, as I said, this is one case, or there could be some more cases. But on these singular cases, we cannot change the act. Okay, what happened? That is why child right activists are criticizing, still debating the amendment which was made in the backdrop of Nirbhaya case, which Verma committee actually suggested. I must tell you that Parliament Standing Committee rejected that recommendation, but still government went ahead under the public pressure. So sometimes public reacts quite overreacts to a situation. I'm not saying that the case was not important. Yes, it was a very horrendous case. It was a horrible case, but it should not force government to amend the act and make children suffer. Because of a single amendment, many children, other children would suffer. Then that would defeat the rehabilitation spirit of Juvenile Justice Act. So this is my opinion. You can always disagree, but the point is, the data does not suggest. Data and evidence says that children actually commit crimes. They fall in this trap. They do not do it willingly. They fall in this trap. It is because of the structure. It is because of the context. It is because of the situation. Because maybe a child who is living in the street, he has not got sufficient enriching childhood or family care or love. He has always been ridiculed. He has always been, I mean, as I said, bashed and hurt. So the point is, it will definitely shape his personality. But yes, other things need to be done. It's not just amendment. Look, amendment is a very simple thing to do, particularly when you have. But the point is, amendments, beyond amendments, what is that we need to do? As I said, we have to invest in children. We have to see what are the root causes that create a situation for a child to commit a crime, or that actually exposes children to adversity. So I know this is not a sufficient answer. Nobody gets convinced when it comes to reducing. Even we always debate, because I teach child protection to social work students in university. There is always debate on this issue. Yes, that is true. Debates are very important, but we need to see the spirit of the act. Is the spirit of the act punishment, or is it rehabilitation? Okay, that is something very important. And because a 16, for example, now a 17-year-old is is given punishment, or he is tried as an adult. So what about the life that he for and then, for example, if he is shifted to central jail, or an adult jail, so will it be in the interest of justice? So what will happen to his childhood? Will he be a hardened criminal? So all these things do, there are documented evidences that do show that children, when they are exposed to, or then when they are in interaction with hardened criminals, they do learn the same thing. And this is evident even in our own case. And there is another question, I think. We are placing under trial children against whom? Okay. Yeah, no, actually, Shaista, it's not that children, there is segregation by age, even by, so that is the role of the superintendent of CCI. What happens in CCIs or in a juvenile home, children are segregated, as per the assessment by the counselor, that protection officer, or other professionals in the, or even the child psychologist. So, recently I cannot name the case, but I was taken on board by government to assess a particular case, a child. Okay, so we assess it, and when then we could see, yes, they do segregate. They have their own professionals, particularly at juvenile home Harvan, where they understand and assess that which children should stay with what. But yes, always, maybe while they are dining, while they have tea, or while they play, it may affect. But the point is, it is the responsibility of the, that is why I said professionals are needed in every CCI, and sufficient number of professionals, so that they we can say, detoxify the brains of such children. Because committing a crime would have a great impact on a child. Okay, for example, recently, that acid attack child who was involved, alleged to be involved. I think the judgment was also he's involved in that case, but still lodged in juvenile home Harvan. So that thing is there. It will definitely, they might be sharing, obviously, their own stories. So when they play, when they dine, it will definitely have some, we can say, effect on there. But I think it is the responsibility of the professional to take it further, deal with such situations, and 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 make some positive, I should say, development in that, in the direction of reformation. But CCI is a professional setup, and that is why the need of professionals is very important. And trained professionals, experienced professionals, they know how to deal with, and they do segregate them and I mean, obviously, look at their own limitation. That's also true. So there is another important question: how does the JJ board ensure free legal aid? Yes, in every DCPO, district child protection unit, in district, we have this probationary come legal officer. Okay, he or she is particularly a lawyer. They do give lawyer this legal aid. In JJB can also direct the district legal services authority to provide a free provide free legal aid to the children who are in conflict with law. That is there. they they,
With a
they can order.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There is a provision also, Legal Service Authority Act,
Yes,
Section
yes, yes,
12,
definitely.
Clause C.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So
I mean to
transaction.
say that in every DCPU there is also a lawyer, probationary come legal officer. So he or she is always available and is always in touch with the district legal services authority. Yes.
Sir, I have a last suggestion. Sir, this I have request. Sir, can
Mhm.
our outgoing student, these law students, volunteer their services in child care institutions in Jammu and Kashmir?
Yeah, I think what we can do, we can collaborate on this, and the point is you have to write to Mission Vatsalya, or you have to
Mhm.
write to district child protection officer. If they
Okay,
are
sir.
from Srinagar,
Yes, sir.
yeah, you can write to, look, district child protection officer is the right person to approach, because
Mhm.
if you approach at MD level, it is a bit, no, it will is MD, mission director, Mission Vatsalya, it will be, it may take a lot of time. But if you directly approach DCPO, he
Yes,
or
sir.
she, because currently our students are also having their field work in CCIs or other JJB, CWC, social work students. So we wrote to DCPO, District Child Protection Officer, and in fact directly to, sometimes you can also write to CWC directly, the chairperson.
Okay,
So
sir.
they can facilitate. It's not a it's a good experience, but only issue is, CWC, JJBs are overloaded with cases. They have huge number of cases.
That's true, sir.
So they hardly get time to attend to the internees or fieldwork, who do students who do fieldwork. But yes, it is an option. Maybe in batch 2 or 3 students can go and maybe even witness how CWC works, what CCIs do, and that is true. You can approach, I think, DCPO or chairperson directly.
Because JJ Act has now been inserted in the syllabus as well. That's
Hmm.
why there may be a need that they have to volunteer their services in the child care institutions of Jammu and Kashmir. That's why I was taking a suggestion from you.
Yeah, I mean, it is important. You know, you can do one thing, as I said, uh, if they are from different districts, for example, Gandarbal, Badgam, because Srinagar cannot accommodate. How many students you have?
Sir, there may be more than 100 students in one batch,
Acha,
in the
100.
outgoing batch.
So, but they would be from different districts, isn't it?
Yes, they are from across Kashmir, all across Kashmir.
Okay, so what I could suggest, if you could like place them in their own home districts, because every district has CWC, JJB,
Mhm.
CCIs, Palash, and Parisha.
Yes, sir.
So, for example, if somebody is from Kulgam, so give him an authority letter, and he will visit the CWC Kulgam or DCPO Kulgam, then he can facilitate. तो वहाँ उसको experience हो जाएगा. I think that is because if you send all of them to CWC Srinagar, it will be it cannot be managed, no, by that person.
Yes, sir, they are overburdened there.
Yeah, they are they have huge number of cases. So I think this is thank you for. I mean, this is very important questions were raised, and this is the debate that we have, and we should debate. It's not that uh, we agree to one another. There's always scope for discussion, disagreements, and particularly lawyers, because आपका तो field ही है disagreements का और agreements का भी, but we should learn, and I thank the organizers for inviting me, and it has greatly even helped me as a resource person. Thank you all.
Thank you so much for such an useful presentation on this child care institutions in Jammu and Kashmir. We are very thankful to you, sir, for spending this valuable time with us. Hope we
Always,
also
thank you.
are with you in next sessions to come. Uh, Thank you, sir, on behalf of me
Take
and
care.
on
Thank
behalf
you.
of the
All the
whole
best.
team.
Allah Hafiz. Assalamu
Okay,
alaikum.
Allah Hafiz. God bless.